Welcome neighbors and friends. I've been asked to give this speech in English so that you can understand me at all, and that is what I will now do. I was at a demonstration yesterday in Lund, which I thought was going to be like this one, where peaceful, ordinary people get together out of a shared common concern for their country. Unfortunately, that was not quite the case. I'm sorry to say that apparently there was one participant who might have had a political stance that I would absolutely disagree with. So just to set the record straight, I carried yesterday this sign, a sign of support for Israel and all Jewish peoples, because I have a special place in my heart for them, as they're fighting an incredible fight against overwhelming odds, surrounded by enemies. They need our support. For those who can't see the small letters on the sign, I have added a quote I very much like by Pamela Geller. In any war between the civilized man and the savage, support the civilized man. It's hard to disagree with that. And on that note, I carry on with my speech for today. Can you take that? Thank you. It is a privilege for me to be here speaking to you, and I'm overjoyed that Sweden is finally starting to wake up, as witnessed by all the many people here today. A revolution is starting. We are living in historic times. Every European country is in turmoil and distress. We are in the midst of a crisis we have not seen since the end of World War II. Our countries are, as you know, thanks to our governments, Brussels and the EU, being invaded by masses of mostly economic migrants, and at the same time also by dangerous Islamic forces, equally dangerous to the well-being of Europe and its citizens. We know that none of those arriving are true refugees, as they have passed through numerous safe countries. They are invaders, economic migrants, taking advantage of a bad situation to flood into Europe and to take advantage of what hardworking European people have earned. The EU has failed. Our governments have failed and are still failing catastrophically. We're fighting on several fronts. We're not just fighting illegal immigration, we are fighting our own left-leaning governments and the media, who appear to be actively trying to trample us in order to make this invasion of migrants happen. You, more than most here in Sweden, know the terrible consequence of an out-of-control, literally runaway immigration policy, if you can call it a policy at all. It's more like a suicide pact. Things are happening fast, and I think it is safe to say that it is not going in a positive direction. We are literally in the process of being overrun and overwhelmed. Unfettered, illegal immigration is inundating all of Europe with people, and violence is erupting everywhere in Europe as a direct result. Violence is the logical and terrible consequence of governments failing to consider the histories, culture rights, and values of their own people. It is the consequence of a government that ignores the cries of its people. The evidence of how bad it is visible all around us, but also in what we read and hear of people forming or thinking of forming their own groups to violently defend themselves. The burning of asylum centers is a picture of the state of people's desperation and anger. This is a bitter and terrible solution to something which could have been fixed so easily by simple acts of legislation. Acts that your government has chosen not to take. Nothing has been done to halt the escalation of the situation. On the contrary, your government, our governments, have let this situation boil completely out of control. Muslims and even returning jihadi warriors are flooding your country, demanding money and preferential treatment while they are raping the Swedish women. Jews are being persecuted again. To the Swedish government, how do you live with yourself? Romas are literally shitting all over your parks and backyards and robbing you blind. Violence done by migrants is escalating everywhere. We have, here in the north, reached a point where we cannot afford to sleep any longer because we have been asleep. And this process has been going on for many years. This migrant crisis is merely the finishing touch of the destruction of our cultures and our societies. Our respective governments have at election time promised us many things, but have delivered something completely different. They have failed in their first responsibility, and that is to take care of their countries and their population. They have blatantly broken their agreement and their trust with us, the people whose interest and safekeeping they were elected to protect. That said, we ourselves cannot avoid taking upon us some of the responsibility for this situation. One is that our governments have overstepped their mandate and failed to protect our countries. But where our responsibility lies is in that we have accepted this destruction without actively protesting and voicing our opinion. So while our politicians have openly butchered our societies, we have been largely silent. We have allowed ourselves to be lied to without reacting to do something about it and without speaking out. We have let the leftist media fill us with lies, and we have largely accepted their disinformation and opinions quite without question. Even when we have discovered their lies and have disagreed, we have been silent. We have blindly been pummeled by the cultural elite without fighting back, and recognition needs to be given to the only true media in Sweden, probably in Europe, which has been by and large the independent media, without which we would have remained ignorant to the true state of affairs. Well, the fact remains, we have voted for the cowards and traitors now sitting in our governments. We elected those politicians who are currently in the process of dismembering our Western society, so much so that those societies are increasingly becoming warped almost beyond recognition. They have made it happen, but we have let it happen. And almost worst of all, we have forgotten our pride as a people. And we have forgotten how to fight for ourselves and for our rights. We have forgotten that if someone does not keep their promises, then they will have broken faith with you, and you have no responsibility to accept their leadership. Think about it. This is not a simple and insignificant political matter that can be fixed with small measures. This is the destruction of our countries, our lives, and the lives of your children, your grandchildren. It is essentially a genocide, what is happening. I'm going to let that sink in for a moment. Ask yourself this, when was the last time you felt happy and secure knowing it was just really a nice ordinary day? I know that for me was quite a long time ago. And I miss an ordinary day with ordinary things happening around me without having to be concerned about this. There is an ancient Chinese curse that goes like this: may you live in interesting times. It's a curse. Food for thought. How many Swedes and Danes are sitting out there in their living rooms watching the horror blossom in front of them in their televisions and in the newspapers, feeling frustrated and powerless to do anything about it? These days I almost have a permanent knot of anxiety in my stomach, but it eases that feeling, knowing that I have found my voice and I no longer give a damn about who thinks what about me. Because I know that I am fighting for freedom and for what is right and just. We owe it to set an example, to show them, the governments, that we are not afraid and we will not be silent anymore. We need to look inside ourselves and to ask ourselves, what am I doing to change the situation? Forget the people who try to stop you speaking out, those who call you Islamophobes and racists, because they don't matter. They're just words, and they cannot hurt you unless you let them. Only people who you respect, those words you listen to. Well, we are all guilty, me included. We have let ourselves be steamrollered by leftist politicians and the media, but that is changing, and fast. We stand here because we now see with open eyes that we cannot wait for our governments to fix the issue, because they are not going to. That is clear to see. Not without our help, or rather our insistence. I'm here to tell you to act, to stand up for yourselves, and to take responsibility for your lives and your country. I am asking you to look within yourself, to find your national pride, your sense of survival, and your hopes for the future. I'm asking you to remember what Sweden used to be, how beautiful and how safe, and that it was a country to be proud of, a country hailed worldwide as an almost perfect society, a society of equality and wealth, economic wealth, cultural wealth. You had everything. Right now you are sitting on a life raft and your captain is poking holes in it. Isn't it time to throw the son of a bitch overboard and to set about trying to fix the damage done? Your government wants you to be silent, polite, submissive, docile, and to stay in your living rooms like mindless puppets. They don't give a care that you're frustrated and unhappy or unfairly treated. They have had years to beat you down, and they want to shut you up to keep you silent. Will you keep silent? No. This has to stop, and things have to change. And the change must start with you. Everybody here, everybody in Europe. Don't wait for your neighbor or somebody else to do something. I read a short quote once. It goes like this: I wondered why somebody didn't do something. Then I realized I am somebody. In other words, it's our responsibility. Each of us can enact a change. In fact, it is only we who can enact a change, but we have to, each one of us, make the decision to do so. You may ask, what can I do? I am asking you to put yourself on the line and speak out. Be brave. Much like I am doing here today, there are about 1,000 things I would rather be doing than standing here in the cold shouting my frustration. But this is just too important. Instead of keeping your anger inside, show it. Use it. Don't harbor the kind of anger that simmers and destroys you from inside. Take your anger at the situation and do something constructive and positive with it. Take action and do something physical. Take to the streets, like today. Shout your rage at the destruction of your life, your country, and your culture by irresponsible people. Shout it from the rooftops. Make demonstration upon demonstration and shout and scream in a collective howl that things must change now. No more talking, no more evasive actions, and no more lies. If all of you Swedes rose up and physically marched on your parliament demanding change and not leaving before you were heard, even if you had to camp outside shouting day in and day out for a change, you would be heard. The media would notice, the international community would notice that Sweden is no longer asleep. We need to rise up and demand, absolutely demand, solutions from your government. They have no right to do as they please. They are neither lords, nor kings, nor emperors. They are elected by you and are here for one reason and one reason only: to do what is absolutely best for you and for your country. Nothing more. Sweden does not belong to the politicians. Sweden belongs to you, the Swedish people. Your elected leaders are your servants, not your masters. Never forget that. We need to take responsibility and sharpen our resolve and to be fearless. It is time to be brave. If we are cowards, we will only end up as Islamic dhimmis, and our life then would be truly poor. Our biggest fight is not the outside threat, though. It is the inside threat of ignorance and fear. We need to show that we are not afraid to speak up. Fight for our culture, our countries, our way of life. We need to show that we are not afraid to take the risks necessary to make the necessary changes. We need to tell people that it is okay to be angry. You should be angry. It is right to be angry at what is happening to you and your way of life, but to use that anger constructively and with precision. We need a revolution. No more political correct nonsense and no more polite talk. The time for that is over. We need action now. Sweden has had enough. The time has come where you must either fight for your country or lose it forever. Fight for it. I beg you, fight for it. Thank you for your attention.